Thank you, Greg. I made that point last time.
Yes.
It's very scaly.
Did it? I just want that to be realized.
We're live.
We are live. Thank you. Bring the hammer down. Good evening and welcome to the December 15th Board of Education meeting for Skokie District 68. May I have a roll call, please?
Bill Jordan.
Here.
Espinoza. Joseph.
Here.
Ruffner.
Here.
Sturbens.
Here.
Sullivan. Here. Warshaw.
Thank you. We will now open our meeting for public comment. Anybody register online?
No.
Nobody signed in the lobby. We will move right along to our superintendent's reports.
All right, thank you very much. Our first one for our last meeting of 2022 is the tax rate information report that was deferred from last meeting for lack of information. And we now have most of that information, so.
Yes, the county has now posted a majority of that information. This is just an overall breakdown of kind of how our EAV is combined and how the tax bills have gone out. The first slide here shows the EAV breakdown compared in residential properties to commercial and industrial properties. We're still right around that 50%, which is great, meaning that our actual residents who live within the district are paying about half of the taxes that we levy every year, and all the commercial properties are paying the other half, so that's great. That leads us to a breakdown of the district EAV and tax rate. With a lot of commercial property, our EAV is higher, and that's the top line. And when our EAV goes up, as you can see, it's kind of a mirrored image, then the tax rate goes down. And it's just a simple math calculation, so usually they mirror themselves there. If we look across the township at EAVs and tax rates, you'll see we're in the exact same locations we were last year. We break down our EAV by pupil just to kind of see how we compare. We're pretty close to the middle compared to all other districts within the township, which I think is good. We're not at the top or the bottom, but the tax rate total, I like to say, we're right at the bottom. Compared to last year's tax rate, we're up about 7%, which again kind of just mirrors EAV kind of reducing a little bit as reported in November. However, a lot of the other districts within the township, one other one was right over 7%. Most of them were in the 10 to 11 or 12% range. One was at 22%, so quite a large increase for them. Lastly, when we break down tax information, this is just a tax bill taken comparatively of a specific location household within the district, comparing last year's tax bill to this year's tax bill. I know it says 2020, but those are the tax years, not the actual years that you pay them in. So overall, District 68 at this specific property went down 0.4%, which shows you our levy went up, right? We asked for more money. But just comparatively every year, depending on how your own property is assessed, each and every property is assessed, it might go up more than the percentage that we asked for, and it might go down. So last year we asked, I believe for 1.8, we ended up getting 1.9% increase from the prior year. However, this specific property for District 68 went down 0.5%. District 219, it went up a little more than what they could actually increase their levy by. Overall, you can kind of see the overall bill went up less than 1%, but just kind of a comparison. Any questions?
Thank you, that's great. Thanks very much. On to our second report, which is an overview of our curriculum review cycle.
I just wanted to give you some updates on where we are with some curriculum initiatives. Last year, we really worked on, still coming out of COVID, beginning a social studies review, kindergarten through eighth grade, which I reported out to you kind of where we stood last April with that. Follow up a little bit this evening. And then continued our professional learning with several different consultants and vendors. This year, we really have kind of relaunched our school improvement process. We've worked on revising our curriculum review cycle, beginning to look at a science review. That conversation also will take place tonight. Concluding the social studies review, launching a district SEL committee with Sharon Jagabalas, and then also launched standards-based grading and report card learning team, and then continuing our professional learning. Looking forward to next year, continuing to look at social emotional learning as part of that committee work. Looking at an LMC review, just kind of assessing where our libraries stand in terms of the book collections that they have. And then also looking at writing curriculum for 6th through 8th grade. So a typical curriculum review cycle, curriculum and programs are reviewed every 5 to 7 years. It really just depends on many circumstances and contextual factors as to where within that time frame you review things. We developed a multi-year review cycle in 2018 when I first came into the district, with the goal really of catching up some pretty overdue reviews, and we were smoothly launched into that, and and something happened and we had a little interruption. So we've now kind of circled back to that and really kind of looked at what's a priority area and what's the next priority area, and then really mapping out from there, taking into consideration that really our core content areas need to be one of the priority areas, but we also don't want to have a huge curriculum review year after year in major content, because we want to be sensitive to teachers' bandwidth and being able to acclimate to new curriculum and implementing it with fidelity. I want to overwhelm. So this is the updated curriculum review cycle. I listed for you all of the different areas that typically are reviewed, most of them with a learning team, but not all of them with a learning team necessarily. When a previous review or adoption took place, and then beginning this school year, kind of where we anticipate different areas falling over the next number of school years.
Yeah, if I may, one of the examples of a place where there's not like a full learning team would be like the Spanish. We adopted new Spanish textbooks in 2021. There's 2 Spanish teachers, so we don't have a full curriculum review cycle. And what really happened there is the high school adopted a new Spanish textbook series and curriculum. So in order for us to really prepare our kids well so they can make it into AP Spanish in high school, we needed to follow their adoption and go along with that. So that's an example of when a review or an update takes place, it doesn't have a full learning team to look at.
Yep, that's a perfect example. And other encore areas such as drama or GTT that are single teacher sort of classroom situations are not a full learning team. We really just work with that teacher and the administration to look at the curriculum and move forward that way. So that's what we have going on. Any questions for me on the curriculum review cycle or other updates? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do have a very brief additional superintendent comment to make. We have launched clubs. The flyers have gone out at the elementary schools, and they are set to start in January once we return.
1 week after we get back.
1 week after we get back. So clubs are making their return. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Our next item of business is the reading and acceptance of minutes. May I have a motion?
I call for a motion to approve the minutes from the November 17, 2022 Board of Education regular meeting.
I second the motion.
Bill Jordan,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The consent agenda is our next item of business. Does any member wish to remove any item for separate consideration? Then may I have a motion?
Well, to spread this around, I'll take the next one. I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes the personnel report authorizing the change of status, resignation, and retirement of licensed staff, the hire, change of status, resignation, and leave of absence of classified staff, including the termination of Carlos Lycia Moreno, financial reports, pay orders, and expenditures, and second reading support of education policies 4.120, 6.20, 6.50, 6.60, and 6.65.
I second the motion.
All right, Joseph,
Yes.
Brefner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bell Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Gold stars for Jeff and Katrina. And we move on to our reports and discussion items, starting with our K-5 science proposal.
So if you'll recall, as we were coming out of the pandemic, there was lots of concerns about learning loss, and we still have those concerns and have started to try to tackle those. And one of the first things we did at the time is we increased the elementary school week by 2 hours a week. We did that by capturing the time between when kids went home at the elementary level and when the teacher's contract day ended, on average approximately a half an hour later. So we felt really good about that. We were giving kids more instruction to try to get back some of the time and focus that they lost during the remote time of the pandemic. One of the consequences of that, though, is we took time away from teachers to be able to have some of the meetings, to be able to address some of the initiatives we wanted them to address. Sometimes that time was additional planning time, but it was valuable time for teachers. I think they very much understood why we did that, but at the same time, they've kind of been feeling the pain of the reduced time that they've had. And now, as we're looking at trying to ramp up MTSS and get that to be even more robust, to be able to continue to address learning loss, one of the obstacles we have with teachers is time for them to be able to talk about the individual students they have that need some additional supports. So we put on our thinking caps and taking information that came out of the teacher survey for strategic planning and from some of the conversations that took place at strategic planning as well, we came up with this idea of a way to give teachers back some time so they could address some of these issues that are very important to the progress of the district, while not taking instructional time back away from the students. And if we recall, at the time when we did that, we also had discovered that the amount of instructional time our K-5 kids was below the state average. So that wasn't a comfortable place for us to be. So we came up with the idea of taking science out of the elementary teachers' teaching duties, and thereby that's one less thing for them to plan for, one less thing for them to teach. And we would then hire a dedicated science teacher for each one of the elementary buildings. So science would still take place at the elementary level. It would be done in a pull-out basis, and most likely in the makerspace classrooms, which are kind of ideal for being able to provide science instruction. We would also revise our science curriculum to include STEM, which is sort of a goal we've had for a long time, to increase STEM activities at the elementary level. We did that a few years ago when we created makerspaces, but it was kind of it wasn't a regular thing that all teachers brought their kids and did STEM activities all the time. This would make that a more regular occurrence. So kids would leave their classroom and go to the science room twice a week for 45 minutes a week for science instruction. That gives teachers more time to be able to address student needs, and they'd recover some of the time that they had lost when we gave kids more instructional time. It preserves the additional instructional time we gave to kids. We also think that by having a dedicated science teacher, they're probably going to be able to dig in a little bit deeper with science instruction with kids than a teacher who has to plan for so many different subject areas as it is. I mean, we all know the teacher load has just gotten exponentially more challenging in recent years, and we view this as a step to try to address that as well. Basically, what this would require would be a learning team that would start in January to try to look at the curriculum. And then we would need to hire 3 more teachers, approximate cost of, depending on who the teachers are, what their experience is, 250,000 probably. And maybe some minor modifications to the classrooms that science would take place in. And at the same time, even though that's an additional expense that we currently don't have, we think it's well worth it for our kids, for our teachers, mental health and well-being as well. And just their ability to be able to get all the many things done that we ask them to do on a daily basis. At the same time that represents an additional expense, the junior high enrollment has been going down for several years in a row. And, when I started, I think we were about 650 kids. I want to say we're about 525 today. Rolling numbers forward, we're going to lose about 25 more kids going to next year. So we have not really addressed staff reductions there for a while, and the class size averages over there are in the teens for the most part. Our plan was to look at that and maybe riff a few positions of the subject areas that are lowest. So it'll probably pay for an addition of 3 science teachers if we were to do that minimally. I did share this with our EA chat members. Once a month we get together with an EA representative from each one of our buildings, and on Tuesday I gave them a heads up, and that's when the board packet goes out. So I'd rather have them hear something first from us before it went out there, so I let them know about the proposal. And joy was probably the best way I could describe elation and joy, that they felt heard. And I know several of the principals have shared back, they've had teachers come down even teary-eyed that their needs were being considered and that they were going to be able to address student needs better. So this is something we're really excited about. We think it's a very low-cost way to address a whole host of needs. And I will say, over the years, I've had a good number of elementary parents talk about adding STEM at the elementary level. We always talk about girls not being well represented in STEM, so maybe an earlier start for all students would be, a good benefit there as well. Any questions?
No, I think it's awesome being able to bring STEM to the district and being able to do that level, and getting to get a dedicated science teacher at the elementary school, like that's where the kids really, and speaking from my daughter and stuff like that, like when the teacher's really able to dig into the content, it's just that creativity starts at that level. So I think it's awesome that we're able to get some dedicated science people there. So, yeah.
Alright, just a quick question. I agree. I just was curious, you mentioned that the push-in model would be 2 times a week at...
So it would be pull-out. They would come out to their own classroom, to the science teacher's classroom, essentially, 2 times a week for 45 minutes each time.
Each time?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does that compare? Again, I know it's going to be very much more focused on, STEM as opposed to general science, but is there any sense of the amount of time that students currently spend in the science curriculum in the general classroom, and would this be a plus or minus? Again, I know it's going to be value added in the curriculum, but I'm just curious about the time, because it's aligned with other, what's the phrase that we use? Art, music, and
Specials.
specials.
Yeah.
So that kind of weirds me out a little bit.
Yeah.
To hear it. And I know that's not what it means, but how does
Yeah,
it
and my
compare-
description of specials was kind of like they're coming out of it.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
a couple times,
yeah.
similar to the specials.
Yeah.
But it's not
in
an
the
art.
act of leaving the classroom, but I know it's not specials otherwise. I'm just curious as to what
Now,
the,
90 minutes a week is about where instructionally, with time allocations, we are now with social studies and science. What will change is that students will experience science the entire school year. Right now, in a trimester, they spend about half of the time in a social studies unit. with no science instruction, and then they flip to a science unit because there's not enough time in the day to have science and social studies. So there will be more continuity, 2 days a week of science and 2 to 3 days a week of social studies. The amount of time stays about the same, it just becomes a little bit more of a consistent experience with students.
Thank you.
That, and I think too, that, when kids come into the science room, the science teacher's ready to go, the instruction's ready, whereas
Sort of a
you're
transition.
teaching language arts, and all of a sudden you gotta switch to science, you've gotta pull things out and kind of get going. So I would hope there'd be some time, captured.
And the makerspace as a lab space
Yeah.
is, just very exciting.
That's exciting to see Megan, sorry.
Oh, you were excited to see me? Thank you, Justine.
No, I am also excited about the lab space and
Okay.
makerspace. That's great.
That's what I was imagining. I just didn't know if the numbers, were again another benefit of having, not just the time, and dedicated time, but more quantifiable. So
A large chunk of the elementary school day is literacy focused, but teachers are able to integrate science and social studies content into literacy, so they get a little bit of time back from that. But, a big chunk of the day is literacy, and then math is 75 minutes a day, and then you pepper in all the other little pieces and,
And not to take anything away from our current elementary teachers that teach science in addition to all the other content areas, but we envision that a teacher who's teaching science all day has a specific passion for science, and that they're going to be able to dedicate a lot more attention and focus to science instruction than a classroom teacher who has to divide their time and attention between so many content areas. So.
it's very exciting. Thank you.
I have just one small question, and it actually emerges from the committee work I've been doing on the standard-based grading stuff. And one of the things that I was left with, and I was actually talking to Dr. Bradley about, was that we really do demand a lot from our teachers, and I do worry about time. So I'm actually also really excited about this proposal. Along that end, though, for having a STEM teacher, just thinking about how you teach STEM to kindergartners versus fifth graders, in that 45-minute period that each classroom's coming in, do we have it factored in for those teachers to ensure that they have enough planning time as well? Is that envisioned in there? Because that would be a concern with just the vastness of difference in those. So I'm just wondering if that's factored in.
It's somewhat similar to like art and music, deals with that same spectrum of kids as well.
Yeah, I think that will be part of our charge in the learning team is really looking at resources and curriculum that make that planning across 6 different grade levels doable and reasonable, but also rigorous, and what we want for our students in the end. So that will definitely be a consideration. And we've plotted out the number of minutes we have in the day and how many of those are instructional with students, and then the minutes that are lunch for that teacher plus plan time, just to make sure that it is realistic and will work.
Another benefit that we had identified that I neglected to mention a few minutes ago is by having elementary science teachers, they'll be able to collaborate with junior high science teachers, so there'll be greater alignment with the curriculum and what happens and what the experiences are. So it's a win there as well.
And presumably they have the same teacher. I mean, with consistency of staffing, you'd have the same science teacher
For multiple years.
multiple years. So they could be tracking your progress across.
I'm imagining some of our current teachers may be very interested and, wanted to, a teacher who has a passion for science might be very excited about the opportunity.
And would that be an internal, and then this is deeply administrative, I'm just curious, would that be an internal transfer type of a role as opposed to a shifting of responsibilities? It would be, they would be rehired in that context. If they're existing blank grade school teacher, they would be then hired, they could apply to that. Okay.
Right. And, we conduct interviews and, make sure we get the very best candidates for the positions. Get the most bang for the buck, so to speak. That's great. So it's not an action item tonight, what I was looking for was sort of a consent nod, because the action would actually come in hiring. It's when you would approve this, because that's, really the additional cost piece here. So I'm sensing support. Is that accurate?
You're sensing correctly.
Absolutely. Stand up.
Yep.
We can talk about STEAM later. Get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do have art instruction, and we have some collaboration going on between the
That's the
teachers.
next
so-
We actually have already started talking a little bit about with our kindergartners, bringing in some art into that.
Fantastic.
And the club, the after school club, one of them is STEAM.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Well done.
there you go. Well, thank you very much. I know you have made how many K-5 teachers do we have out there? You've made a great deal of K-5 teachers
Yes.
very excited and very happy, and made them feel very acknowledged tonight. So thank you very much.
Hey. All right. And now we are moving on to our Board of Education agreements, Part 2. I believe there are only 2 pages of
Yes.
these. Is that
There you go.
correct? And I believe Megan Espinoza had volunteered to read this. Would you like to take them one at a time and talk about them? We can go around and each read one bullet point. You don't have to read the whole slide.
You can get started.
Go for it.
Alright, board members have an obligation to express their opinions and respect others' opinions. Board members understand the importance of speaking with one clear voice to both the superintendent and the community. The superintendent is accountable only to the full Board of Education. Board members have the right to disagree with the decision of the board, but will support the board in its decision by abiding by the will of the majority. No individual board member other than the board president has the authority to act or speak on behalf of the board without the consent of the board.
Thank you, Megan. So yeah, this is the perils of being a board member. I think this is one of the things that it's probably the hardest for myself as a new member and for new members to acclimate to, is what is our role as a board member. I think it's spelled out pretty clearly here. I think the something that we will talk about in our board evaluation is how we do this effectively. I know we'll have side conversations, I will have side conversations, Jim will have side conversations, and some of that stuff we want to either bring into the board or to become a board discussion, and how that gets on the agenda or how those discussions happen can always be, it can be a little bit of a tricky navigation, so. Does anything jump out at anyone in this room that we should look at clarifying or maybe spelling out better in the future?
I can tell you this one in particular is one that helps bring me some measure of sanity. The superintendent's accountable only to the full Board of Education, for example. If I had to take directions from 7 individual board members, those directions could clash with each other, and I could be doing what one board member wants, but not what another one wants. And that's a very difficult way to be able to operate. So I look to you guys to give me a clear direction, so that I know what to do. Because if there was 7 of you wanting different things, I would not know what to do, and it would be very hard to be successful at anything. So the idea that you guys all come together and give me clear direction is vital to the sanity of the superintendent.
Well, I think the last bullet is, I think bullets 1 through 4, definitely, I think we dig around in those more when we have our training. The last one is very procedural, right? Because we do get these emails, and I always appreciate either the response from the president or from the superintendent saying, we've deployed Christy to respond, or we will, be having, this person over to the district to engage. And so, I learned to just wait.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I was trigger happy necessarily to respond, but I know that you guys are going to tell us how those messages have been responded to. And so, I get great comfort in knowing how we actually enacted this, that the president has authority to speak with the board, but that the superintendent often, because a lot of these things are administrative, will copy us on the communication to the board, to the community member or whomever that has spoken or raised a question. So again, I think that's the one that's probably the most just procedural of these. in my
For sure.
opinion.
Any other thoughts? Shall move on?
There's one more set.
Who wants to take a short one?
Communicating with the media. The board president is the spokesperson for the board to the media. The superintendent is the spokesperson for the district.
Short and sweet, sort of an expansion on the last point on the previous page. This has come up one time in my tenure. I think I had to fashion a statement with the agreement with the township to distribute some of our ESSER funds. It's the first time I had to actually put anything together. Actually, twice. I did prepare a statement to be read for a village meeting that was then maybe read by somebody else. We won't get into detail on that, but yeah, relatively straightforward, not something that we have too many opportunities to worry about, fortunately.
We used to have regular
Reporter.
reporters attend and sometimes would come up to the board president and ask for a quote. So, but
Yeah, we used to get some media coverage once upon a time.
once
but
upon a time.
It doesn't happen much anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, he now works for the township.
Oh, he does?
Is that, yeah.
Okay.
If we're getting the media's attention, we gotta put it for something good.
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
well, was it home?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope. Well.
Short and sweet, we can move on to our Board of Education policy first readings.
All right, I know you're all excited that we're back in the policy business.
Mhm.
We've got 4 first readings tonight. The first one is policy 2210, organizational school board meeting. There was a legislative change. It used to state that you had to seat a new board within 28 days after the consolidated election, which gave you a very short window because you had to wait until the votes were canvassed, which happens typically 21 days after. So you just had between 21 and 28 days to seat a new board. They've now changed that to 40 days. So that's policy 2210. Any questions there?
How does that impact our calendar? Have you looked at this in next year?
So
Is
we were
election
aware
day-
this was coming
Yeah.
down with our, since we already scheduled our
Organization
organization
meeting,
meeting.
yeah.
It already falls within the time frame that's after the 21 days and before the 40.
Great.
Second one is policy 410, fiscal and business management. There is also a legislative update here. It requires districts to disclose the cash reserve balance of funds related to their operational levy at public hearings for the district budget and levy for the taxable year. This one is another example of a policy that we have a practice already that Ryan can describe that makes it so we don't have to change anything.
As part of our financial reports and the consent agenda, we already do that every board meeting. The first page of the financial reports is our fund balance, which shows the reserve, so check.
We're ahead of the curve. Ahead of the curve. Fantastic.
Next policy is policy 4140, waiver of student fees. There was so much that was changed here. We highlighted big sections, even though some of the words didn't actually change. But there was a new public act requiring districts to waive fees for students whose parents are veterans or active duty military personnel with income at or below the 200% of the federal poverty line. And then there's also a portion that adds homeless children and youth as students eligible for waivers. I'm not sure I understand that because they already were, and we've always done that, so I'm not sure. There's really not much of a change here, other than ensuring that any active duty military personnel are eligible if they're 200% below the poverty line. We do not have very many active military duty parents in the district. So,
It applies to veterans kids too, and that we do.
yes.
No, well, I didn't hear, what did you say?
We do have veteran
You have
families in the district though, so that would
Yeah.
something that would service some of our kids.
One of the other changes here is that they want school districts to include in every single fee bill and everything else a reminder that there is a waiver eligibility process. So that's something we'll have to change to our fee bills. It's just that reminder line that there is a waiver process to be able to apply for it. Questions on that one? Also, 5120 employee ethics. This is another one that there's so many changes to it that we just highlighted the entire policy. This is also a legislatively mandated change. Explanation page here, somewhere. The policies has been renamed and it explicitly references an employee code of professional conduct. And then it's substantially written to set forth expectations more clearly for employee behavior, including maintaining appropriate boundaries with students. So it doesn't necessarily change our practices other than the language in the policy changes and, especially with that title. This one you'll see come up, I don't know, maybe a dozen future policies that will go to second reading because at the end of every policy, it references other policies that are connected. And this policy is referenced by many, many other policies as part of the legal references and cross-references at the end. So because the title of it changed, those other policies will have to change their cross-references. So there'll be a lot of second readings as a result of this one. Any questions? That concludes our policy section for this evening.
All right. Next item of business is the adoption of the strategic plan. Megan, we have a new motion policy, which you are about to, so just wanted to anticipate that. May I have a motion?
I call for a motion to adopt the Skokie School District 68 strategic plan for the 2023 to 2025 as presented.
I second the motion.
Well done.
So there is a very minor change that I became aware of late this afternoon. One of our board members read with fine attention to detail and found we have growth mindset listed twice under the core values. And it is very important, but we only need it listed there once. So before we send it to print,
Great.
We will
Good catch.
take that out second time. Thank you, Noel, for the close reading.
Oh, gold star for Noel.
But I guess the other thing I wanted to point out, I think I included in the memo about science and STEM. It doesn't take long for us to start wrapping our mind around the strategic plan even before it's being finalized. And we used a lot of the strategic plan process to come up with that science proposal. And so we're already finding ways to make that strategic plan come to life even as it's being approved. So, and we look forward to finding many other ways to make that a living document. So.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturbanks,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Emphatic yes.
Bell Jordan,
Enthusiastic, yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yay.
The strategic plan is
Thank
adopted.
you. Yeah, we are very excited to get to work on it.
Our next item of business is the adoption of the social studies curriculum. May I have a motion?
I call for a motion to adopt the social studies curriculum inquiry journey from Inquire Ed at a cost of $66,813.12 for a 4-year subscription as presented.
Second motion.
So this is our kindergarten through 5th grade social studies curriculum, inquiry journeys. Teachers are very excited about the possibilities with this curriculum to really have our students see themselves in the curriculum and think about themselves as active participants of the community, taking informed action, culturally relevant, it's rigorous, it's really a great program, so we're very excited about it.
Questions?
Sturbanks,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bell Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner.
Yes. And we will now move on to me being forever grateful for my board members. Our next item of business is authorizing the tax levy for the year 2022. May I have a motion?
I call for a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the tax levy for the year 2022 as follows. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of School District Number 68, Cook County, Illinois, adopt the tax levy resolution as follows. The sum of $21,700,000 for educational purposes, and the sum of $4 million for operations and maintenance purposes, and the sum of $700,000 for transportation purposes, and the sum of $90,000 for working cash purposes, and the sum of $200,000 for Illinois municipal retirement purposes, and the sum of $500,000 for Social Security and Medicare purposes, and the sum of $0 for fire prevention and life safety, and the sum of $100,000 for tort immunity purposes, and the sum of $2 million for special education purposes, on the equalized assessed valuation of all the taxable property in School District 68, Cook County, Illinois, for the year 2022, and to include the resolution authorizing reduction of certain fund levies for the 2022 levy year, the truth in taxation certificate of compliance, and certification required by 35 ILCS 218-190.7, dated this 15th day of December 2022.
I second the motion.
So spiteful.
Thank you, I was wondering who was gonna.
Well done.
Yeah.
So these are the exact same numbers that were presented at last month's meeting. Also attached to the board agenda is a certificate of levy that needs to be filed with the county. The resolution authorizing the final tax levy. The resolution authorizing the deduction, which means basically anything that we levy over the amount that we will get will come solely off of the one fund levied, so everything will come out of the education fund. All the other levy amounts listed will get fully furnished. The truth in taxation, meaning that we did everything according to law, and then the certificate required by the county and the new school code says that just in case we levied less than what we were actually able to get, we're able to still collect that and apply it to future years. So we should be fine and covered. This is really just a kind of, just in case it doesn't hurt to do it.
Insurance.
It is new, basically it's just insurance. That's free, which, why not? So.
Okay. Sullivan,
Yes.
Bill Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturban.
Yes.
Thank you.
This next item of business is authorizing construction contracts for the summer of 2023. May I have a motion?
I call for a motion to authorize Nicholas and Associates Incorporated to issue construction contracts for the following contractors for 2023 summer work at Jane Stenson Elementary School and Old Orchard Junior High School. For general trades to Monarch for their base bid in the amount of $1,580,600 and $20,500 for alternate one. For HVAC to AMI for their base bid in the amount of $1,794,000 and $184,000 for alternate one. And for electrical to American for their base bid in the amount of $767,700 and $4,500 for alternate one as presented.
I second the motion.
So these are the bids that came in earlier this month. They include all of the work at Jane Stenson that we've been talking about, with the exception of the roof. Again, that bid will be going out in January and brought back to the board in February. The alternate was an additional add-on that we had to ask for in November, as written in the memo. The air handling unit kind of covering the ECC portion of Old Orchard is beyond its life expectancy and is currently leaking and halfway failing. So They do have heat at this moment, I wanna make that very clear. They are comfortable, but it's time to replace that, and while there's other work being done and contractors in the district, it was recommended by our engineer and architect to get it done now. So these bids did come in about where we expected them to when presented earlier in the fall. I was actually fairly surprised at how low some of them were, and some of them were a little higher than about what we expected, so happy with the overall cost.
Anything else?
Bill Jordan,
Yes.
Espinoza. Yes. Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
If there's no further business to come before the board, I call for a motion to adjourn.
I call for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second the motion.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Ruffner,
Yes.
Sturban,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bill Jordan.
Yes.
I just like hearing all
I
your
had way too much
voices.
fun with that.
All right.
Motion is adjourned.
Then the meeting is adjourned.
You were the one brave enough to say it, so.